Welcome to A Slice of Sound, the podcast where we talk to some of our favourite producers and musicians in the scene. And today we've got a very special guest. He goes by the name of Mondo Loops. He's an incredible producer, guitarist and YouTuber. Since dropping his debut track back in 2019, Mondo Loops has been consistently dropping amazing music, having released 7 albums and more singles than my brain can even compete. Alongside all the amazing music, he's also been steadily growing his YouTube channel, where you can find some of the most informative and enjoyable production-related content on the platform. This episode was recorded live on Twitch, and without further ado, let's get straight into that chat. Thanks for agreeing to come on. It's an honour to have you on. How are you doing?
Good, mate. Yeah, thanks for having me. It's great to be part of it. I really like what you're building with the bread and butter community. So yeah, it's great to be here.
And you were telling me before you've just got back from a 3-week trip in Philippines and Japan. How was that? And what's it like to be back?
It was really good. It's chaotic.
Okay.
And yeah, being self-employed, it's sort of, I'm trying to ignore everything. I've got my laptop with me, but I'm just trying to like forget everything else work related while I'm away.
Sure.
So yeah, I've got back now, and it's like jumping back in, trying to get on top of things.
Sure.
But yeah, Japan was amazing.
Yeah.
I recommend anyone checking it out.
That is top of the list of all the places that I want to go and visit. So yeah, that's hopefully in the next couple of years I can do that. And so yeah, on these interviews, we kind of like to take it all the way back to the beginning, all the way back to way before you were even making music or anything like that. And your bio told me you're from the northwest of England, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Whereabouts is that specifically?
So I'm from Chester, which is sort of in between Liverpool and Manchester, I guess. It's a great spot as a musician, because it really is so close to both Manchester and Liverpool, and London's pretty, England's not that big, so London's only a couple hours away.
Sure.
So yeah, it's a great spot to be, I think.
Yeah, I was actually at uni in Chester.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm in Manchester now, but yeah, I was at university there. Lovely
Nice.
place.
How was the university experience of Chester?
It was good. I enjoyed it. I didn't really know what to expect because I'm from Brighton, but it was coming up. It was. I mean, people are more friendly up here, so
Really?
I think so. Yeah, down south, no one's friendly, but yeah.
I've heard great things about Brighton though.
Oh, Brighton's nice. Yeah. But no, Chester was fun for sure. And then I guess so. Growing up in the northwest of England and stuff, what sort of music were you hearing in your house? What was being played?
A lot of classic rock, I guess. That was a sort of initial. A lot of classic rock, Led Zeppelin, Beatles, again, being so close to Liverpool, I think.
Sure.
I mean, globally, obviously, such a huge deal, but particularly being this close to Liverpool, it was a big part of my sort of initial music. It was very mixed. Quite a lot of jazz as well. I've got a lot of records that used to be my dad's that are sort of your Miles Davis and a lot of sort of slower jazz focused stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
So quite a big mix of like your rocky and jazzy stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
And then, so then when you got a little bit older, what was like the first type of music that kind of was your thing? It wasn't like just stuff that you heard around the house.
Yeah. I feel like I was late getting onto music as a whole.
Okay.
Like sort of developing my own sort of, I guess, taste. But for me, I was a big fan of quite a heavy acoustic sort of influences.
Sure.
Stuff. I mean, Bon Iver was a huge one that I got into quite early.
Okay.
And then later on, it would be like Ben Howard and like the sort of folky Fleet Fox sound. So that's something I've always gravitated towards. And in terms of electric guitar, for me, I'd not really thought about playing electric guitar because it was acoustic that I sort of started with.
Sure.
And it wasn't until I started listening to John Mayer, believe it or not, for the electric guitar. Continuum was just, it's sort of, because I guess I'd heard electric guitar as this heavy, distorted, sort of rocky sound.
Sure.
That I didn't really resonate with playing. And then I heard some of the stuff that he was playing on Continuum and that sort of style of bluesy guitar, and that really sort of took my interest towards the electric guitar more.
I remember that. Yeah, that John Mayer album was incredible. I think that was the first stuff I heard from him, and
Yeah, it's a fantastic album.
So good. And so what age did you actually first start playing guitar?
It was around 13, I think.
Okay.
I remember at the time thinking it was like too late in my head, because I knew I had friends who play guitar and they were already, so proficient on the guitar.
Sure.
I picked it up and I was like, oh, I feel like I've missed a chance now for whatever reason at that age. But yeah, it was about 13, and it was like predominantly acoustic stuff.
Right.
For years, until I sort of, again, like, it was the John Mayer stuff that influenced me to get the electric guitar. But I struggled with it because I got a cheap secondhand electric guitar from a car boot sale.
Okay.
And the idea of intonating or setting up your guitar, I just had I had no concept of that.
Right.
And this thing, I think it had heavy strings on, and it was, I guess, set up for like quite light strings. So the fretboard was all over the place. The strings were well above the fret. I just couldn't play it.
Sure.
So it took me a while to like figure out why.
Yeah.
It wasn't working for me, but yeah.
Did you play in like bands when you were younger at all?
Not really. I played with like the school band, I suppose.
Okay. Nice.
And there's a couple of, at the time, there was a couple of great guitar players that I sort of learned a lot from doing that. But I never really got around to properly getting into, as much as I'd love to, sort of making a band and like jamming in the garage. But
sure.
But yeah, there was some sort of opportunities to play with other players
right
in school. But
and then from that point, I'm guessing you're still at school at this point. At what point did you decide you wanted to get into like production or recording yourself, playing music at all?
It was still school. A friend of mine was making like electronic music.
Okay.
For like Eaton Messy, I think was the big channel at the time.
Oh yeah.
So it was quite it was more like house, and that sort of introduced me to the concept of making music, and picked up a copy of FL Studio.
Sure.
I didn't know what I was doing. I eventually had moved on to Ableton and still not know what I was doing really. But I heard like, I don't know, Fortet was using it or whatever, so I thought, all right, I've got to be using that now.
Yeah.
So it did, and I was just sort of dabbling with it for quite a few years before really taking it more seriously. And obviously it's so much information to try and take in when you start production. It can almost be too daunting, and you're sort of like, right, okay, I understand how it basically works, but then you start to read up about your mixing, mastering, and it just blows your head off.
Yeah.
So it was a long process of chipping away at like the sort of getting to know Ableton and getting to know the whole process over some years probably.
Sure.
Because I'd make little tracks and demos, but it was many years before I'd ever consider looking into releasing it.
Right. And you said your friends were into like the more electronic stuff, Eaton Messy sort of things. Was that the sort of thing you were making at the time as well? I've heard you say that you were a big fan of Bonobo and Floating Points, is it at that point?
Yeah, Floating Points, Fortet, Bonobo were huge influences in school. That's sort of a new genre that I was just opened up to. And I loved how with those artists and sort of like Marabou State, similar sort of artists, it sort of feels like a blend of more organic guitars and,
yeah, definitely,
and sort of drums, but it's still electronic music. So that was, I guess, what I wanted to make at the time. It was a little bit more like housey EDM sounding, I think, when I first started, and then I'd get more into this, like Floating Points Fortet sound. But to me, it was way too intimidating to sort of try that, especially with like the Floating Points style. And when you see him doing interviews and breaking down all of the crazy synths and process, it's sort of like, wow, I wouldn't even know where to start.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah, I see that with all the like the drum and bass guys and stuff, with like all the sound design and everything they're doing, and I'm like, I've been making music for X amount of years, and I couldn't dream of making something as crazy as that.
Yeah, for sure.
But no, I feel you, sure. So then what point did you like discover or decide you wanted to start making sort of like more lo-fi music?
I sort of fell into it a little bit, because from school up to the age, I think it was like 25 maybe when I started my YouTube channel.
Sure.
Maybe 24, I can't remember. But up from like school to that point, I'd been dabbling a little bit with music production, sort of got comfortable with Ableton, and I'd also alongside, but maybe not necessarily for the same purpose, been playing guitar and trying to get better at guitar and electric guitar and pedals and that sort of thing.
Sure.
And I think I remember starting and thinking, because I had a Squier Stratocaster at this point in time, and I really wanted to have a better guitar.
Okay.
So the idea that I came up with was I was going to make sort of guitar loop videos on YouTube, which is sort of why I came up with Mondo Loops. I thought it would be more searchable to have the loops in there as well. So that was the first thing I did, and I made a couple of guitar loop videos just covering, I think I covered like Radiohead, I did like a Bonobo cover just on the like a loop pedal, and then I wanted to start doing my own sort of compositions. And I don't know what it was that sort of triggered the jump, but I started doing my own compositions, and it's like, well, that drums, give it a sort of hip hop groove, and it sort of fell more into the hip hop lo-fi sound, and that's sort of what started taking off more for me. And since then, it was just delving more into the sound and sort of trying to make it more authentic, I guess. The initial stuff that I was making wasn't the best.
Right.
It was the first time I tried to record guitar as well.
Oh,
which
really?
was in of itself a bit of a challenge.
Yeah, I bet. And so then how long do you think it took you from that point to like kind of develop your sound that is kind of your sound now? So if you listen to your music now, you can hear that it's a Mondo Loops track pretty easily. A lot to do with the guitar, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's a slow process, and I guess it's always evolving. And I'm trying to sort of mix up production and processes as I go, sort of like consciously trying to, I guess, evolve. But I think it's probably maybe mostly the guitar sort of sound that I generally have and use on my tracks, I think makes it more distinguishable.
Sure. Yeah. And I guess moving on to like more production specific questions, what's your like setup like now? Do you have a lot of like outboard stuff, or are you mainly within the box? And what DAW are you using?
So I'm using Ableton, just upgraded to 12. I've not really explored it that much yet, but it looks cool in it so far. I'd say mostly in the box. I try and keep everything as minimal as possible.
Sure.
For me, it's sort of, I'd love the idea of having all the guitar pedals looped into different chains in Ableton, and I've had sort of synths in the past.
Sure.
But when it comes down to it, I usually find any sort of friction that you get from having a more complex process just sort of slows it down for me too much.
Sure.
Just being able to drag and drop, your presets or your synth tracks, and then just instantly be able to use them, I find having that sort of least resistance to be better for me to sort of creatively come up with these new ideas.
Sure.
As soon as I start to patch in stuff, I end up getting lost in that sort of specific process. So I've got a reamp box for guitar pedals.
Okay.
So you can sort of patch in any guitar pedal you want, and it'll get the levels right, reamp it, so you can play pianos or synths or anything through them.
Oh,
you can get some really cool sounds. But yeah, I end up just not actually writing a song, more sort of messing around with these effects and sounds. And
sure.
Yeah, it could take hours away before we realise, actually, I need to do something now, capture something.
Yeah. Is there not a way to like do that and then have that just recording straight through into Ableton, and then I guess you'd have loads and loads of audio to just chop up or something?
Yeah, I think there's definitely ways to do it. A lot of people I know have great success with it. I think maybe for me, it's just I like to have sort of set procedures for things, I guess. Sure. And when I start to get a bit too experimental, I start to lose it a bit. Right.
No, I hear you for sure. And then on the computer, do you have any like go-to or favorite plugins that you use on everything? I know we've got mainly producers on this channel, so they're always looking for new plugins if there's anything that you use on everything.
I think a lot of people are probably in the same boat. Stuff like Soothe, Gullfoss, that they find their way onto most tracks. I'm delving into a lot of the Cleveground audio stuff at the minute.
Okay.
Because they've got a plugin called Lux, which I think it's about $10. It's a really cheap sort of one knob plugin, and it's like a compressor, sort of compression saturation sound that just seems to brighten up a lot of tracks. So I'm using a lot of that. And then reverb wise, Baby Audio's got a really nice one called Spaced Out, which I use a lot on my tracks.
Okay.
And everything from Sound Toys is sort of in constant rotation. Like the delays in Sound Toys and the plate reverb's really good. And just everything, all the distortion, saturation is fantastic.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, just recently got the whole bundle, and so good.
Delving into.
Yeah, and also shout out to Cleveground, because we're running competition with them at the minute. So those that don't know about it, make sure you enter the Ben Bada Boom sample pack contest for some free Cleveground plugins. You're doing my job for me there.
Fantastic stuff.
Yeah,
because they've got all this sort of percussive Foley instruments as well.
Yeah,
super useful.
Yeah, some really great stuff. Like, I really love Skaka. I think that's my favorite one, just for all the percussion loops and stuff. That's great. But they have some amazing, like, really unique stuff.
Yeah, sure.
And then I guess moving on to like when you're making a track, do you have like a set routine of how you like to start it? Do you like to start with drums or melodies, or is it something else?
Usually it would be melody, I suppose, but a lot of it depends on the sort of style of track I'm making.
Sure.
And I guess sort of doing it as a job, a lot of the time with the lo-fi beats, there'll be certain compilations or certain opportunities, or I'm trying to like keep tracks coming, for the pitching and every couple of weeks and that sort of thing. So I've got a sort of, I guess, like a routine where I write the melody, do the drums, and it's sort of there's a little bit of a pattern to it, I guess.
Right.
It just helps me write the sort of lo-fi beats, but on top of that, I also like to try and keep it fresh and dedicate a certain amount of time to sort of try new things. It could be sort of different styles of lo-fi, or trying to incorporate different genres into it, or just at the minute I'm doing a lot of sort of experiment with new sounds, new genres. I'm working with a company where they sort of send quite last minute pitches for whatever it may be that they need, adverts, whatever. I think often it's if they've realized they can't use a track and they need a similar vibe to sort of replace it.
Right.
They'll send out like a last minute pitch, and you've got like a couple of days to come up with this track. And I'm really enjoying doing that because it's sort of there's no specific genre. It could be anything, and you get some really interesting results. I feel when you're not sort of in your comfort zone.
Yeah.
Be it genre or sort of style of music that you're making. And then often I'll find that if I'm trying to make sort of like an upbeat track, housey electronica sort of style, I'll find new sounds doing that I can then bring back to what I guess I do more commonly.
Oh, interesting.
In the lo-fi beats. And I think again with new genres, if I'm not that comfortable with it, I usually start with the drums just to get the groove of the track, and then build it around that. Or if it's sort of more ambient, then I guess I've got no pattern to it really. I'm just experimenting with sounds. But usually it would be drums if it's something new. Yeah.
What's like the like weirdest, I don't know, genre or track that you've had to make for one of those pitches?
A lot of them I couldn't tell you what the genre is.
Okay.
They'll just send like, we want it to sound like this.
Okay, so reference tracks.
Yeah, the reference tracks. And one recently was very flute heavy. There was no drums.
Interesting.
It was just acoustic guitar and flutes.
Oh wow.
So like, right, okay, this is a new style. But going back to the VST question, have you heard of the SWAM plugins?
I don't think so, no.
They're sort of, I think they're completely modeled brass instruments and flutes and stuff like that. So it's completely modeled from the ground up, so there's no samples. And you get some unbelievably realistic flute sounds from it. Because I guess the way that they've modeled it, you have to use a sort of expressive controller. So I've got this, you've seen these like controller, which has got I think 4 different MIDI parameters that you can control with the pad. So you can control the sort of breath and the decay of the flutes and stuff, and I was getting some super realistic sounds out of that. So experiment with recording actual guitar, and then using this swam flute.
That's cool. Oh yeah, I'm gonna have to check that out for sure. Does that controller come with the program or something, or is that a separate thing you have to buy?
It's a separate thing. It's the best one that I sort of worked for me, because you can still use whatever MIDI controller you use, and then use the MIDI controller with one hand, use that with the other hand.
Right.
I think a lot of people use the Rolly keyboard.
Okay, yeah.
Which I did try it, but I just couldn't gel with it.
Right.
And I think there's a few more similar controllers that are coming out as well at the minute. So this was some that look more like a conventional MIDI keyboard.
Sure.
But they've got additional sort of parameters that you can.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna
more than have to touch. Yeah.
Have a look into that for sure. And I read that you were talking about, and I've seen in your videos, you say you use a lot of Foley's and recorded sounds, textures and stuff in your music. Can you remember what the weirdest sound or source you've recorded that you've actually put into a track? Is there any weird sounds that you can think of?
There's nothing that stands out too much. I guess Foley wise, I like to just go outside and just find anything that, leaves, grass, tree branches. For one of my packs, I went to sort of a forest near Chester.
Okay.
Just tried to find the quietest spot, because it was quite busy, like people walking around and stuff, and cars, and just recording everything I could find, and then you sort of lose track of what's what when you sort of processing it.
Right.
And then for my recent pack as well, I was recording a lot of pots and pans with drumsticks, which I guess it's not that weird, but you get some interesting results.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah. And I also read you saying that you, with your lo-fi stuff, you try to incorporate cinematic sounds. Was that an intentional thing that you did when you first started making it, or is that something that's developed over time?
I think it's something that's developed really. The Spitfire Audio plugins were ones that I really gelled with.
Okay.
They've got quite a few in their sort of under $30 range, and I guess they're all really focused on the sort of cinematic trailer music, TV sort of background music, and that sort of sounds. I think their main focus.
Yeah.
But experimenting with those plugins, I found some really great sounds, and I think in part the YouTube stuff as well. I was trying to come up with new concept videos. So often it would be there was one that I was trying to sort of start to write more 3/4 based music.
Okay.
And it started coming out initially really cinematic, and then I loved the way that started to blend with the Foley and the drums and the groove on a 3/4 beat. Just, in my opinion, works really well with lo-fi. And then from there it was just experiment with the sort of cinematic plugins and sounds.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah, really interesting results.
It is. Yeah, it's very. Yeah, like I said before, you have your own unique sound, which you seem to have been able to craft with both. Yeah, I guess the guitar and the more cinematic synths and sounds and stuff like that, which sounds really great. And one other thing I was thinking, so obviously you're putting out a lot of music. I was just looking through your Spotify today, and you've got lots of music coming out all the time. Obviously you're on YouTube, you're putting out videos all the time, you're putting out sample packs all the time as well. How do you what does a normal day or week look like for you? How do you manage your time? How do you get all of this done, basically?
Yeah, I mean, I recently got Notion, which has been pretty helpful.
Okay.
I'd like to say I was really organized, but it definitely comes in waves.
Sure.
And often I'll find I'll be on the back foot trying to sort of catch up with deadlines, which is never ideal, I think, with trying to be creative. But I think a big thing for me was to just finish as much as possible.
Okay.
Because when I was initially starting, and I sort of do this as well with, I've got a new project that I'm trying to write music for, and I just, in my head, I want it to be perfect, and it's sort of, I guess, never quite what I was expecting.
Right.
And I had that with lo-fi as well, and for me it was just a matter of, as soon as you get a little bit of momentum with an idea, to just finish it, because often it will start to feel a bit stale, and then it can just be sort of brushed under the rug and you just forget about it. But finishing tracks was a big one, And another thing that really helped in terms of writing music was creating these sample packs.
Okay.
Because I try and complete the pack in a set amount of time. I give myself however many days to sort of finish it. And for the packs, because it's not a complete song, it would be, I sort of release little snippets of, I guess, so it would be guitar, piano,
right,
bass, for example, like blended together. So it's sort of like a idea starter.
Yeah.
And when I started doing that, in my head I was just like, right, I'm just going to write a 30-second idea, then move on, 30-second idea, move on. It worked really well, sort of creatively, outside of just making sample packs, because there's less pressure in my head. I'm not trying to make a complete perfect track. I'm just trying to come up with a short idea.
Sure.
And sort of taking that outside of the pack creation. Sometimes I'll just say, okay, I've got to spend the next few days just coming up with loads of little ideas, and then going back and finishing as many as I can.
Right.
So
Interesting.
well for me.
So then because I do quite a few sample packs as well. Like for you, do you go into like creating the samples with a different mindset as to when you're working on a full track, or when you start, is it kind of the same thing, that initial kind of idea?
For me, it's the same, I think. I've heard people sort of don't like the idea of sort of, writing the best music and then releasing it as samples.
Sure.
Because it's out there, I guess. But for me, I just go in with the same mind. And sometimes there will be sounds where I'm like, I really like this and I want to use it specifically for something. And then I'll just use that for something else. But yeah, I think I try and go in with the sort of same writing stance as I would anything else, really.
Interesting.
Is that something you would also do, or have you got like a different mindset for it?
So I'd been doing a lot of sample packs for like Splice and Loop Masters, basically. So it was a lot of like 4 8-bar loops. So it's like really short segments. And then because I did that like full time for like a year, and then I wasn't really putting any music out, and I kind of got, when I then decided, I'm going to make some actual music now, I was like I was just stuck with like these, only be able to make these tiny little ideas.
Yeah.
But then now I've started making longer samples and stuff as well as music, and it's it's a similar sort of process for sure.
I think it's definitely a benefit to having to doing both, especially with the shorter samples. For me, like if I was like someone asked for, I've had it in the past where I was writing samples, I just wanted, again, like short guitar loops.
Sure.
And I want like 20.
Okay.
And then you'll start recording some loops that obviously it'll start to flow in initially. You start to get towards the end of it, and it's like I've got no more ideas. Like I've sort of used my vocab of guitar chords. So then it like forces you to delve in and find something else. And I think that will just pass on to anything else that you do.
I guess that's it. Yeah. If you're creating a lot, you then have to like try and think, how am I gonna need to learn a few new chords, or I need to learn all these different things to try and make something different. And then I guess that can then be good going forward, working on your own stuff that you're going to put out, for sure.
Yeah, 100%.
And then talking of going back to YouTube a little bit, how do you come up with your ideas for YouTube videos? What's the process for that?
It's often been fairly random, I guess.
Okay.
It's in my mind that I need to be more strategic with it, especially at the minute. I think,
right, in
an ideal world, you'd sort of start with the searchable title and work your way back. But for me, a lot of the time, it's just I've made a song that I like, or this idea that I sort of like the sound of, and I'll make a video from whatever that may be, and try and come up with some way of making it remotely searchable, I guess.
Right.
So a lot of it is just whatever I'm making at that point in time. Or recently I just made one about some vocal libraries, because after I came back from holiday, I had a few emails that I'd saved from new libraries that had come out, and they sounded insane. So it's just thought, cover some of my favorite vocal libraries, for example. But yeah, I guess it's pretty random. I need to be more strategic. I think one thing again I was thinking was to maybe try more short form content.
Okay.
And then I think from there, I think I've heard this mentioned as well with music, to sort of release ideas as short form. see which takes off, and then complete that, and sort of finish the song and focus on that, I guess, for a while. So I'm thinking the same with videos, maybe cover some short topics, see what resonates, and
that's a good idea. Yeah, you see that with, like, I guess with someone like Pink Pantheress. I think she started off on TikTok and she was putting out little snippets of songs, and then the ones that people loved or got loads of views were the songs that she finished and put out. So I think that would make a lot of sense with, like, videos. I guess it's a way of, like, crowdsourcing an idea of what people actually want to see.
Test the waters first, I guess. Because you never really know what's going to be the one that sort of takes off or what doesn't, I think.
Has that, like, surprised you with, like, the videos that have done well? Like, have there been ones where you thought, okay, this isn't my best, and that's been the thing that everyone has been drawn to?
Yeah. There's one that haunts me that it was like the first ever guitar. I think maybe it was the first video that I spoke on.
Okay.
It was the first guitar tutorial that I did, and it's quite a difficult process for me anyway. As soon as you turn the camera on, it's like, I don't know what to say. I've got to have a plan, but I didn't for that video. I'm just sort of winging it, trying to, like, chop it together in editing, and that video blew up. It was the sort of most organic views any video has got on YouTube for me, and it was because I'd made a couple of mistakes as well.
Okay.
And I've heard that you're supposed to, like, put mistakes into your videos because people can't resist but commenting on them.
Yes, it's true.
So for me, it was like, I made that video, there's a couple of mistakes, people commented on, like, quite heavily about them, and it just blew up, and it just kept getting bigger and bigger. I was trying to recapture. I'd make, like, after that, I'd make better versions, like clean versions that sort of scripted and planned. Okay. Checked everything, and they wouldn't do as well. So it's just
interesting.
Can't always.
That's definitely true. Yeah, the thing with if there's a mistake in the video, I know I put up TikToks and stuff, and or just something that people are going to comment about. Like, so I did this video, and it was about breaking down this Kanye West song or something, and I said something like, before Kanye West was a anti-Semitic weirdo, basically, he used to make some good music, and then just thousands and thousands of people being like, no, he's not. He's
I really defended him.
People can't help commenting on stuff for sure.
But it's sometimes, like, you'll see videos and I know they're baiting me in to comment, but I just cannot resist. You just gotta say something.
And then sticking with YouTube, are there any, like, from someone who does YouTube, makes videos on YouTube, are there any YouTubers, or it's specifically in the production world, that you'd recommend to people as putting out, like, really good content that you can learn stuff from?
I think in terms of YouTubers who are making content that you'd learn from, ignoring the production side, the stuff that does well is sort of, like, very, very scripted, very sort of meticulously edited, like Mr. Beast style stuff. I think if you're looking to really push YouTube, you've got to get whatever it is you're covering, that sort of constant movement, sound effects style of thing, which I sort of conscious of, and I'm trying to include, I guess, it to some extent, but without becoming, the intensity of those sort of viral videos.
Yeah, for sure.
But in terms of music production, I've been loving the Jordan Rakai videos that he's been doing. It's quite sporadically, but I've learned a lot from them. I think he's produced in Logic, but just breaking down his workflow, because I'm a big fan of his music. That's been really interesting. And a guitar player that I think a lot of people have heard of at this point, but always amazes me when he releases new videos, is the Sean Angus Watson guitar stuff. I don't know if you've heard of his music.
I think I've seen it, no.
Any video he puts out is just phenomenal. He's as a guitar player, unmatched in my opinion.
I'll definitely check that out for sure. And those Jordan Rakai, because he's done, like, it was like live streams, I think, to start with, on his
I think maybe
Patreon,
in fact it could be live streams that have been edited down.
They're really good.
Binging them recently, and they are fantastic.
I use Logic as well, so I've been taking a lot of tips from from those videos for sure. Yeah, he's great.
Yeah.
And then I got just a few more questions before we let you go. One actually first was a question that someone sent me over on Instagram from somebody called Bloody Wolf. I think that's how you say it. Right. And he says, he or she, sorry, what keeps or has kept you going when things haven't been going well with your music and you've kind of hit a sort of wall in your career? And I suppose that could be something in the beginning when you're first starting out, or further along in your career. Like, yeah, when you've had any sort of roadblocks, what's the sort of thing that's motivated you to keep going?
I think for me, there seems in music there seems to be constant roadblocks, and I guess that creatively it's probably the same. When I initially sort of got into music production, I'd be joining various Facebook groups, and they're overwhelmingly negative. Usually, whether it's about music production, I'm in some like library music groups and stuff, and they're all overwhelmingly negative. But I sort of try to just ignore it and push past it and just be consistent.
Sure.
And I found that over time, you sort of exceed my own expectations, I suppose. Just music starts to take off. You start to make a bit of money from it, and all of a sudden, it's like this stuff that you've been hearing isn't quite right. You've just sort of got to push past it, I guess.
Right.
So yeah, I think for me, it's just I try and I've got like tasks that I'll do when I'm really not feeling creative at all, like admin-y stuff, or just watching videos for inspiration. But generally, it's just ploughing on, I think.
Sure. Just trying to, I guess trying to.
But I just try and like keep going, because I mean, there's a lot of days where I do sort of feel quite negative about what I'm making or whatever it may be. So it's just trying to remind yourself, like, hang on, you've done stuff successfully in the past. Just keep making it, keep
so it will come,
learning. I think it's just never assuming that I've, I guess, learned everything I can about anything really, be it guitar or production or creatively in YouTube, that sort of things. It's just constantly trying to learn. I'm always sort of dedicating time each day to learning something.
Sure.
And ploughing on.
And would you say I find this interesting to ask people, do you try and work on music pretty much every day? Or is it just as and when the inspiration hits?
As and when, I guess. But like, YouTube videos can take a good couple of days,
and
it's just video editing, and there's a lot of admin that I have to do. Just like sometimes I can lose a day just replying to emails and planning and stuff.
Sure.
So yeah, it's sort of more as and when, but it's always sort of in the back of my mind, like I've not done anything. It's like when I went away for 3 weeks, it's like I've not made anything in 3 weeks. So as soon as I got back, it was like I need to start trying to record some ideas at least.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. And
are you sort of an everyday music?
No, I try to be, but then stuff always seems to get in the way.
Yeah.
So I'd always try to like start a small idea if I can, or like you said, there's other stuff, something to do with music related, even if it's not creative, like just pushing forward kind of. But I try to, for sure. And then I guess the final question I normally like to ask people is, which is quite a tough one to answer actually, what is the one piece of advice you wish you had when you first started making music?
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
I think when I started, I as well, I didn't really have I had no concept that I'd be able to do it as a career. And I think the main thing is that I guess everyone can do it, because I see a lot of negativity around it. There's a lot of stigma around making money as a musician, I've noticed, and there's a lot of negativity around trying to sort of pursue music as a career.
Sure.
But I think it's a good time to do it, and I think everyone can do it, if you want to, and you've got the time to dedicate to it. It's very achievable, no matter what it may be. Just trying to break it all down into steps, I guess, be it learning guitar or music production. Yeah, very much achievable.
Sure.
Just keep ticking away at it.
That's good. Great answer.
That's
And
advice.
I guess nowadays there's a lot more ways that you can, even if you're not full time releasing your own music, you can attest to like you're putting out your own sample packs as well. There's another revenue stream. You've got your YouTube and there's all these other different ways. Like you were saying, you're creating music to like a brief and stuff, sync sort of things.
Yeah.
So there's all these different ways.
Constantly new stuff as well.
Yeah, for sure.
You've got to be, I think, because you can never predict what's going to happen, what the new thing is going to be, but you've got to be sort of ready for it, I guess. So if like me, sort of putting off starting things, you've got to be sort of ready. Like, you've got to have your back catalogue of music, or you've got to have your skills there ready for whatever this thing may arise.
For sure. Yeah.
I think
that's great. But thank you so much for agreeing to come on. It's been great chatting to you.
Okay.
Whereabouts can everybody find you on socials or on YouTube and stuff?
Yeah, I've got YouTube, Instagram, etc. It's all just Mondo Loops. Managed to grab that handle, so
nice.
At Mondo Loops.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And I encourage everyone to go and check out Mondo Loops YouTube channel on streaming. Sample packs are incredible as well. And again, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you very much, mate. It's
And
nice to be here.
We'll keep in touch for sure.